published 0414 EDT, the 16th of October 2017, updated 0446 EDT, the 16th of October 2017. After slipping his shackles on the Mediterranean island of Elba, Napoleon Bonaparte pulled up at Galthuan aboard the brig, Inconstant. With his motley crew of supporters he marched into the tinsel town of Cannes, then a fishing port, gathering more cutthroats and rakings before setting off on foot to recapture Paris. It was March 1, 1815, and the start of the 100 Days, the last gasp of his empire. I decided to follow in his footsteps along the famous 200-mile route Napoleon, through the Western Alps. Like Napoleon, I went on to Paris along the Great Flat Plain of eastern France, though the iconic eponymous journey officially ends where the Alpine scenery ends, in Grenoble. But unlike the Little General, I was in a soft-top Jaguar F-Type, as I didn't have 100 days to spare. I had sailed into the Spanish port of Santander after taking the Brittany Ferries cruise from Portsmouth, then drove over the Pyrenees and across the whole of the south of France to get to the start. Mark began his journey in flashy Galthuan, pictured, before picking up his traveling companion in Cannes. This is not the fastest route to Cannes, but I cannot think of a more enjoyable way of getting to the start of a journey that would, at least for Napoleon, be a grim grand tour, ending with exile and death. Shortly after meeting his Waterloo, Galthuan is now a flashy marina, so my choice of car was in keeping. The F-Type is the ideal vehicle for the fabulously scenic and tortuous road through the Alpes Maritimes. After a coffee at the port I rumbled into Cannes to pick up my one and only passenger, just as well as it's a two-seater. Anna was standing outside Notre Dame de Bon Voyage, the church where Napoleon pitched his first camp. We gunned up to Grasse, the perfume capital of the world, where views across the Gulf de la Napoule, the Larens Islands and the whole roaring Riviera are framed in the east by the snow-capped Alps and to the west by the jagged red Estoril Range. The Côte d'Azur, despite its concrete touristic hives, is still a marvel. I donned my fake Ray-Bans and clambered back behind the wheel, pushing the button to take down the hood. There is another button you can press to make the engine roar like a primordial beast, and I pressed that, too. Even here, in Lambo land, where Ferraris are more common than Fiat Puntos, the F-Type cuts a dash. Its squat rear and sleek body suggests serious intent, and its performance is up there with most of the Italian supercars. We were in the F-Type S convertible AWD, which does 060 in 4.8 seconds. The R version is 1.5 seconds faster. "Don't ever borrow one of those," said Anna in a tone that was pleading yet challenging. "Of course not, my dear," I replied. After Cannes, Mark motored up through the tongue-tripping Parc Naturel Régional des Préalpes d'Azur. Pictured speedy Mark drove the F-Type S convertible AWD, which does 060 in 4.8 seconds. We wound our way up through the town centre, then over the top and into Provence Profonde, towards Saint-Vallier d'Ethy and Castellane. Here the lush green lowland suddenly gave way to an arid terrain of rocks and giant slabs of granite. There were snow-capped peaks to the north as we entered the tongue-tripping Parc Naturel Régional des Préalpes d'Azur. The sea was shimmering in the distance, partially obscured by a heat haze, before finally disappearing behind a ridge. The gravel tones of the 3-liter supercharged engine shattered the afternoon peace as we powered up the winding road, rounding a bend to be greeted by a cliff-edge horizon that resembled a giant serrated blade. The road quickly passed the 1,000 meters mark, and suddenly the barren rockscape gave way to a plateau of rolling meadows and hay bales, straight from a constable canvas. As we approached the Parc Naturel Régional du Verdon, the meadows gave way to fields of lavender. I was happy to see that the route would not take us along that precipitous road on which I had frozen in terror a decade before, while crawling along the Gorge de Verdon in a camper van. I don't mind speed, but I sure mind heights. Digne-les-Bains, the capital of Haute-Provence. Napoleon dropped by 202 years ago before marching on to the royalist town of Sisteron, where he and his growing band of followers were greeted with a chilly and rather brave silence. One of Mark's pit stops was the spectacular town of Sisteron, pictured, which lies on the banks of the Durance. Here he dined at the Michelin-starred restaurant at the Le Bonite and make Jaguar Model F-Type S convertible. Odd how much model tested 81,615 pounds. How fast 171 miles per hour 0604.8 sex economy 32.9 mpg emissions 203 gkm. Soon we were passing through Digne-les-Bains, the capital of Haute-Provence. Man has been here since Neolithic times, attracted by the thermal waters. Napoleon dropped by 202 years ago before marching on to the royalist town of Sisteron, where he and his growing band of followers were greeted with a chilly and rather brave silence. Sisteron is a spectacular small town on the banks of the Durance, sitting in the narrow gap between two mountain ranges. For this reason it is known as the gateway to Provence and was settled by the Romans for its strategic importance. But we were briefly veering off the route towards Manosque for the first night, as we'd booked into Le Bon Étape at Chateau Ernouxtobin. This is the home of Michelin-starred chef Janie Gleis, he who cooked dinner for President Mitterrand in 1989, on the night of the 200th anniversary of the French Revolution. Le Bon Étape is an 18th-century inn and has been in the Gleis family for many generations. Janie trained with some of the biggest names in French gastronomy, Troyes Gros, Chapel and Guérard, and has been in charge at the Bon Étape since 1980. After we'd cooled off in the pool, he took us on a tour of the kitchen before having an apéritif in front of the Inglenook fireplace. The brigade starts work in the morning and, in my opinion, the smells that waft from the Maître Cuisinier's cuisine are finer than any perfume from Grasse. I felt it would have been verging on criminal not to eat the menu gastronomie: courgette flowers, broth and field mushrooms with pan-fried foie gras, John Dory filet with a caviar topping in a rosemary jus, followed by sorbet infused with pear schnapps to cleanse the palate, before an onslaught of delicate Sisterin lamb. Then the cheeses and desserts, accompanied by wines that made me realize the sheer impossibility of a life of abstinence. Mark sampled the menu gastronomique at Le Bon Étape, pictured, complete with wines that made me realize the sheer impossibility of a life of abstinence. George Clooney, who has visited, described it as an oasis of calm. But after lunch in the garden, the lure of the road had us back in the car, and on the sinuous tarmac ribbon towards Grenoble. After all, the F-Type is arguably the most exciting car to come out of Britain since the E-Type, and we were overnighting on the banks of the Rhône in Lyon that night. We drove past Gap and over the 1,250 meters high Bayard Pass, following road signs depicting the French Imperial Eagle, which indicate that you are on track. Talking of tracks, the supercharged V6 comes with active dampers and mechanical limited-slip differentials, allowing for precise control even when hoofing it. The handling is faultless. My normally nervous passenger scarcely complained. The driver-centric layout of the cab means that the Speedo is harder to see from the passenger seat, something I am very keen on. After a night in Lyon we ploughed on to Paris, along a not particularly interesting slab of autoroute, but the F-Type is a grand touring car, too. It was effortless cruising, despite constantly having to check that I wasn't going fast enough to excite the speed cameras. We checked into the Paris Peninsula, on the Avenue Caille Acute BER near the Arc de Triomphe. This is a new 5-star hotel in the old UNESCO building, bought and converted at a cost of some €850 million. It opened in 2014. In the early 20th century it had been the Hotel Majestic, and is where the plot to assassinate Hitler was hatched by Klaus von Stauffenberg, in July 1944. It is also where 22 years earlier, the literary socialites, Violet and Sidney Schiff, had hosted the dinner party of the century, at which Proust, Picasso and Stravinsky were present. Our suite seemed as old as the building yet was spanking new, all deep mahoganies and leather, Egyptian cotton and silk, with a jacuzzi lavatory for the comfort of those who would read Proust. In fact, Proust did stay here, as did George Gershwin, who composed An American in Paris while staying at the Majestic. That night we dined with my old friend Yves Camdabord, the French master chef and TV star. His restaurant, La Comptoir, is off the BVD Saint-Germain and is the hottest ticket in Paris. It has been for some time. La Comptoir joins his hotel, the Relais Saint-Germain, and we chowed on salade niçoise, reinvented as a galette, followed by warm and succulent octopus from Palamos, and Pyrenean mountain lamb offset by tangy citrus flavors. Yves, a former front-row forward from Pau, quit the Michelin star system years ago and was pivotal in the back-to-basics approach to haute gastronomy. He has a dangerously seductive wine list, and from our pavement table it was amusing to watch the thirsty enthusiasm with which it was attacked. The road trip, one of my favorites, ended where it had begun at Brittany Ferries HQ in Portsmouth, after we'd taken the overnight sailing from Cannes. I cannot wait to do it again, maybe in the F-Type R.